After becoming comfortable with the functions, we may start to build and truly engage with the archetypes. This is because the archetypes are not built by a series of binaries, but through the relationships of the functions within individuals. An ISTJ should not be understood as an introvert with a pragmatic and logical worldview. They should be understood as SITEFINE, which reveals that they communicate logically and intuitively, but that they have a penchant for nostalgic emotion and need to tend to their needs to ensure that they can be healthy. This model allows us to truly get into understanding the archetypes because it reveals much more information than is on the surface. We assume that we need to know the type of person someone is, but we don't. We need to understand what pairs of functions they're using and which they rely on. The different pairing of functions are the dominant functions, and then the complementary functions. The dominant functions of the ISTJ are SITE, and the complementary functions are SIFI and TENE. Through the dominant functions, we can tell that the ISTJ will rely on past experiences that can either be explained or proven in terms that most people agree with. They rely on their own experiences, but aim to turn that experience into something that can benefit the collective. Through the first complementary functional pair, we know that the ISTJ is also sensitive to their own experience. Although they'd like to contribute to the usefulness of TE and utilize it to communicate and find their place within the world, SIFE reveals a type that is sensitive to their own history. They're prone to love their friends, their neighbors, and whatever else is theirs, forming a sentimentality that goes against scientific pursuit. The secondary pair of complementary functions, TENE, reveals a great potential to put together new ideas and to feed into development in the professional and information worlds, but also a challenge to realize such potential. TENE, as a complementary secondary pair of functions, can also reinforce a negative opinion or a fear of the world without properly being balanced, and this imbalance could be further solidified by SIFI. Understanding the functions and the relationships serves as an incredible source of insight into the way that the different archetypes both process the world and act within it. Every archetype has a unique pair of dominant functions. The only types that are truly similar are the archetypes that only differ on whether they are introverted or extroverted. This means that ISFPs are the only type to have FESE as their dominant pair of functions, similar only to the ESFPs who have SEFI as their dominant pair. Otherwise, each dominant pair is unique and reveals the most about the different archetypes, as it is the relationship between the primary function and the auxiliary function which ends up defining them. Several archetypes share sets of complementary functions. However, ISFPs and INTJs both make use of FINI and TESE. ENTJs and ESFPs also share both sets of complementary functions. This reveals heavy similarities between the different archetypes that wouldn't be seen without an understanding of the functions. Both INTPs and ISFJs are prone to be caught in SITI loops, which is why some INTPs barely act like intuitive types, and why some ISFJs can come across as cold and uncaring. This also results in a similarity of thought between the two types that is pretty unique, as both of them are prone to relying on both of those introverted functions. Most people would expect the INTP to be paired with the INTJ or the ENTJ in terms of how they think, but it's really the ISFJ that has the most comparable thinking habits. This works for all types, as both ENFPs and ESTJs rely on TENE, which can explain both of their styles of communication. All of the archetypes are similar to their opposite types. It's just a matter of where they put the emphasis on their functions. Obviously, the complementary functions are the ones that line up in direction, as the synergy between them is something that is built into the functions. Often many types fall into over-relying on these functions because they have not made peace with the ambiversion that is within most personalities. To be healthy, people need to find a balance between extending themselves too far into the public and withdrawing themselves. Both extroverted loops and introverted loops can be powerful, productive systems, but they lack so much if they are not balanced with other aspects of an individual's personality. The complementary functions are SIFI, SITI, NIFI, NITI, NEFE, NETE, SEFE, and SETE. All archetypes have two of these pairs, and by utilizing both, they can become incredibly balanced people. SIFI is the main function pairing, which is possessed by the ISTJ and the INFP. Although both the ESTJ and the ENFP also make use of the pairing, SIFI is a pairing which focuses on the emotional nostalgia present in an individual's life, their sense of comfort, and sentimental history. It is powerful for bonding, for providing a sense of meaning in life, and for self-care. It can become too hung up on personal experiences, but it tends to provide a rich experience for those who balance it. Naturally, all types with SIFI also have NETE. The types that have this complementary pairing as their main pair are the ESTJs and the ENFPs, who also have the SIFI pair. These archetypes are dominated by creative and rational energy, one that can always expand into new subjects, but that comes with either understanding or a desire to acquire an understanding. It can become a shallow way to pick apart people for information and resources. But with health, it simply provides a wealth of information that comes across more as interested than it does as interrogative. As it is balanced with SIFI, it is a rich cross-section of new, logical information with a deep and emotional sense of history. The combination of SIFI and NETE provides for a perfectly balanced individual, just as all pairings of functions do. SITI is the pair of complements that are shared by INTPs and ISFJs, although also possessed by ENTPs and ESFJs. As discussed above, it leads them to have a similar mode of thought, one that is dominated by personal experience and analysis. While SIFI is nostalgic, SITI is similar, but it focuses on the experience instead of the sentiment. This allows both INTPs and ISFJs to have a great memory of their experiences and their own interpretations of what those experiences means. It is a way of storing information and then have a way of analyzing it, either to implement or for individual mental exercises. The opposite pairing of NEFE also proves powerful in both the ISFJs and INTPs, but more prominent in the ENTPs and ESFJs. This pairing of function allows for uncanny leaps to be made while socializing. Through wild ideas of social harmony, NEFE leads are incredibly charming. They are capable of picking up on the feelings of others, interpreting the mood of a room, and to quickly come up with their own ideas that are inspired by their surroundings. It is a powerful pairing that encourages lighthearted socialization about any subject that can be discovered or remembered. If it is balanced with SITI, then it can perfectly mix with it, providing an easy to get along with and charming atmosphere to contrast with the obsessive and esoteric thoughts that SITI tends to lead to. It produces a relatable face for the mental wars that INTPs and ISFJs in particular wage. NITI can arguably be as esoteric and as obsessive. It is the pairing which is most present in the INFJ and the ISTP, but also present in the ENFJ and the ESTP. Usually, it's accommodated by a physical hobby, which keeps it grounded, but when it's not NITI, it can lead anywhere. It has an incredible and unexplained insight which is further developed by TI, even if the definitions of the terms they use as their starting premise are unclear. This means that both the ISTP and the INFJ can have ideas that they develop over time, beautiful ideas, but through a lack of showing their work, they will have a great struggle to express those ideas. SEFE is the other pairing that comes with NITI, and it is the pairing most expressed in the ENFJ and the ESTP. This is expressed through a gracious physicality, one that is social and one that plays fair. These types pour into the world but understand that there are limits to their interactions and that they'd rather make others feel good rather than make them feel worse. It is this pairing which allows the NITI loop to be balanced and externalized, as it gives the most complicated thoughts an attractive body. But NITI also keeps SEFE from being insufferably shallow. SETE is an incredibly manipulative pairing, as it is the pairing that causes things to occur within the world. The types with this pairing are mainly the ENTJ and the ESFP. However, it is also present in the INTJ and the ISFP. SETE takes in massive amounts of sensory information and applies TE to organize it and make it useful. These are the types that have a vision that they can actually capitalize on because they will force it into existence. It is a stubborn, powerful, and potent pairing of functions. To offset it, ENTJs and ESFPs have NIFI, which serves to reveal the emotional truth behind the actions and thoughts of SETE. The INTJs and the ISFPs are the types who use NIFI the most, and they reveal the sensitive nature of such pairing. Both INTJs and ISFPs tend to be quiet individuals, always working on some sort of project, whether it's for education or some personal pursuit. They constantly expand into the world but process it through a deep and detached sense of judgment. As they interact with the world to learn what's fair according to the rules, they would draw into themselves to determine what they believe is fair. It is only through separating themselves from the world that they can begin to value things for themselves and arrive at their own ethical positions. All of these pairings are part of a pair with another pairing, and that is because all parts of the personality are made to accommodate each other. Biology doesn't often make mistakes, and we become this way for a reason. So it makes sense to find a beautiful structure within human psychology. Every type is perfectly balanced and contains the tools within themselves to become harmonious, happy, and productive. The last kinds of pairings are the opposite functions, which always come together. So, for example, TIFE or FITE. Every archetype with TE has FI, and every archetype with FI has TE. Every archetype that has NE also relies on SI, and every type with NI also relies on SE. The opposite function of each function come along together as they bring each other balance. All of the opposite functions are incredibly compatible. For example, NE is incredibly limited by it being difficult to explain. It is an irrational function which is not only introverted but also mystic in nature. To have an INTJ or an INFJ openly express about it is rare. They usually only share their true thoughts with the people who they think are on the same page, or with people who they love deeply. This is a difficult attribute for many INTJs and INFJs to deal with, but their inferior function actually serves as the answer. Extroverted sensation is an incredible function for being understood and for displaying things to others. While NI might have an incredibly deep relationship with a certain symbol, the history of it and the meaning behind that, SE can wear that symbol well and get people to observe it. SE serves as a vehicle to express the insights that NI supplies. It's through the pairing of the two opposites that INTs and INFs can find ways to share their incredibly personal and private experience with the world around them. Introverted sensation provides a strong sense of history, where ISFJs and ISTJs have a great memory of what they've done and what they mean to them. They're also aware of their health, the way that they're feeling, and other such essential information that every adult needs to be aware of. For these archetypes, that information is direct and always being processed by them, for often there is no way that they can feel out of their body. Extroverted intuition offers a perfect complement to this because SI can become incredibly boring. SI serves to provide a rich sense of history and to provide an honest sense of nostalgia. But that can become annoying to listen to for most people who don't also share a strong reliance on the function. This is where NE shines, as it is the complete opposite. It is always bursting into new territory and trying to reimagine the old. ENTPs and ENFPs are people who are prone to hyperactivity because there's always an opportunity for them. They can't stop seeing it, and they can push into it forever. However, just as SI can become boring, NE can become senseless. So they are a perfect pairing. NE gives new information to prevent SI from becoming stagnant, and SI provides profoundly to the endless stream of information that NE uncovers. Introverted thinking works to give individuals a unique but tested perspective on the world. It also trusts what it can observe. INTPs and ISTPs often prove to be among the hardest individuals to argue with because they require either the theoretical or mechanical understanding before they're willing to accept a premise. It is one of the most powerful functions for analysis, but it often leaves the individuals with it as a primary function in a place that's hard to express. TI builds understanding, but it doesn't give an explanation. An ISTP can have incredible knowledge about how mechanical things function, but they might have no words that they'd offer to explain such processes. The knowledge is stored in something akin to muscle memory. This is why extroverted feeling is such a godsend for those that utilize TE. FE, an actual expression for other people to cue in on, which softens the insistence of TI on understanding. Instead of being restrained by authenticity, all users of TI also have an inherent desire to get along and place harmony over winning arguments due to the presence of FE. They are very sure in their principles, and they have their own relationship with the data and resources that surround them. But after those subjects, they tend to be people who are incredibly easy to get along with. This is because FE places emphasis on good conversation and allows TI to be put on reserve, learning to object when appropriate. However, this also addresses the issue with FE, which can be cowardice. ENFJs and ESFJs do run into issues with expressing themselves, as their desire for harmony can lead them to sacrifice their own health for the good of the collective. TI can save them from using this, though, as through utilizing it, the ENFJs and ESFJs can reveal their own positions and interpretations of the things around them. This will allow them to realize when preserving harmony is obstructing their ability to express their beliefs. Extroverted thinking fulfills a similar role as extroverted feeling in that it also wants to create a consensus, but the problems that the primaries run into are different. While FE leads tend to be forgotten and taken advantage of, TE leads tend to bulldoze over others and not be fully aware of the consequences of their actions. This is because reality isn't moral, but real. For all of the progress that our cultures have made, for all of the cities we built, for all of the ideas we secured, rivers of blood were spilt. There is something that can be valued more than human life, and both ESTJs and ENTJs tend to be the types who understand that. Both are incredibly capable of dedicating themselves to projects much larger than themselves for the sake of a good outcome. This attitude does come with some flaws, as not only can it be forgetting of others, it can be incredibly self-forgetting. TE is built to work, not to build an irrational attachment to things which only slow you down. This is why introverted feeling is the natural and perfect function to pair with it. As TE focuses on the outside world and how to understand the rules that dominate it, FI focuses on the internal reaction to such events and the individual's personal opinion. This means as TE discovers new science and data, FI can react to such data and the implementation of it. TE may understand how to best run a farm for the cheapest costs and a maximum output of meat, but FI understands that individual doesn't want to be exposed to creating such an environment in which the unnecessary suffering of animals would be widespread. FI provides the counter-reasoning to the cold efficiency of TE, acting as a natural outlet for productivity-obsessed and impersonal people. It gives them the stimuli to realize the true fallout that would occur from their decisions and thoughts. Introverted feeling as a primary function runs into its own problems. For the INFPs and ISFPs, this function can be incredibly demanding, dominating how they interact with the world. Most commonly, both archetypes are held back by an understanding of morality, which gets in their way while making friends and being exposed to different forms of culture. This is where extroverted thinking can give to FI as FI gives to it. TI serves to either validate or disprove the feelings of FI, where it looks for the proof that others agree upon to validate the emotions that they are independently processing. As FI explores into territory that's incredibly personal, TE can tie the individual back to the world and reality, giving a true sense of presence to the emotions represented by FI. By itself, introverted feeling is a wonderful function for the individual to understand their placement within the world. The function gives many creative people their worldview, as it is through their emotional reaction that they created their philosophies of life. Explaining those philosophies and interpretations may be difficult, but when it can be captured well, the public ends up with gifts as diverse as the Iliad and the Subterraneans. Understanding all of these pairings and the different functions will leave you well informed about the different archetypes. Seeing the archetypes for the functions that they utilize will equip you with an understanding of others that expands far beyond binaries. Allowing yourself the freedom to analyze people for how they act instead of what you think they are is a great move. It lets you see life for what it is rather than what you want it to be. Don't get caught up in your preconceptions, but allow reality to be as complex as it truly is.